to this episode of the Wagging Tales Podcast, episode 32. Why grooming is essential and fear-free grooming tips for your dogs. Right, so before we go on to any of this, I just want to make it very, very clear to everybody. I am a behaviour consultant. My speciality is in behaviour and training. Jay is not only a behavioural trainer, but he's also a qualified groomer. So we're using this knowledge today. We don't talk about that very often. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, don't worry, you're not going to get Fraser, who can barely groom himself, giving you all of this advice. You're going to get Jay, who's genuinely really, really good at it. And to be honest, it's only fairly recently that I've realised the importance of this. And as a result, now all of my boys actually go for grooming, which is something that I never did in the past. I just did it myself, the very basics. But with the knowledge that I've learned from working with Jay, from working with groomers, it's made me realise the importance of this. So I cannot stress enough, all the great stuff that Jay is going to be giving you is very valid. I'll be putting in my input as well, simply because Jay's downloaded a lot of information onto me in the past few years that we've been working together. So it's almost as if I'm introducing Jay as a guest, even though he is one of our resident hosts.
It's more of me continuously nagging at you over weeks and weeks about, you need to cut your boy's nails, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I think you just got fed up and like, okay, fine, I'll just get it done.
I'm sure you will agree that things are much, much better now. In fact, Porthos went for grooming today. So for those of you that are actually watching, every time my boys go for a grooming, they give them a new bandana every time. So it's pretty cool. And the girl that does mine, we'll talk about that a little bit, because there's a good few decent groomers out there. But there's two main ones that we would talk about mostly, one in the east, one in the west. We'll talk about that a little bit later, though. Okay, So basically, Jay, do you want to start off by telling us the importance of grooming?
Perfect. Okay, so for everyone listening, being a groomer and then learning the skills of a behavioral consultant for canines, these two things don't usually add up, because groomers are taught to do things to get the job done. And then they are taught more things like, if you're having trouble, this is how you can restrain the dog and things like that. They don't teach you about how to ensure that the dog is comfortable. They do tell you about making the dog comfortable, but they don't teach you about how to help the dog be less stressed out, to make sure that the whole grooming is a positive thing. Because as far as I know, there's Fear Free Grooming hasn't landed in Singapore yet. There are groomers out there who have learned a thing or two about Fear Free Grooming, which is great. I hope it really picks up more and more groomers start to look into things like that. But it is still quite limited in Singapore. And it's not their fault, honestly. Of course, the people that abuse, you guys have probably seen it on social media over the past years and stuff. There were some abuse cases and stuff like that. Those people can go to hell. But apart from those, there's a lot of them that don't even realize that what they're doing is causing the dog more stress. Whereas if you think about it from a behavioral point of view, it is not only the groomer's job, it is your job as the parent as well. It is important for you to make sure that your dogs have as little stress as possible. I would say it's almost impossible to be stress-free, but as little stress as possible, so that your dog looks forward to the groom. It becomes more easier for you. Honestly, in the long run, it is so much easier. So when I groom my girls, and I like to do it pretty often, it helps them in their health, in their overall health. So you can notice things like, they might have a lump here, they might have some scarring here, maybe they're scratching a certain spot a lot, and then when you groom them, you can actually take a look. It really helps them be less stressed in general, because if you can spot their issues early, like skin issues, something wrong with their coat, matting, whatever, you can tackle it quickly and then they get over it a lot faster. And then that overall brings down the stress levels of your dog on a day-to-day basis.
The other thing from more of a behavioral standpoint is that if you do grooming properly, it's a massive bonding opportunity. It gives you that chance to spend that time with your dog. Now, this is not something that's uncommon. It's the same in most animals. If you look at chimpanzees, chimpanzees will groom each other as a bonding experience. If you look at wild dogs, wild canines, they will groom each other as part of a bonding exercise. And the same thing goes for almost every mammal on the planet. I say almost. So there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to make the same thing. The thing is if you're forcing your dog into the grooming, like you're shoving them into the shower and things like that, that's going to become an issue for them. Then that's actually reducing the bonding. So learning how to do this gently, learning how to do this with as little stress as possible is a huge, huge bonding opportunity. It helps your dog feel comfortable and loved. And the beautiful thing about that is, guys, is the closer your dog feels to you in a bond, the easier it is for training, the easier it is to modify behaviors that you might want changed. So it's not just a case of, hey, look, my dog looks pretty. It's way more than that. And one thing that I will say from personal experience over the last few months is that when the dogs are well groomed, they're not as itchy. They're not as uncomfortable. It's the same with us.
Not as reactive.
When we are feeling clean and we've just brushed our teeth, we've just had a shower, it makes a huge issue, a huge difference. We are not going to be as grumpy. We feel better. So when the dogs are groomed, they are happy. Now, this sounds strange coming from me, especially from people that have known me for years and years, because that's not something I used to say. But recent education and experiences have taught me that this is very much the case. So let's talk about some of the common grooming challenges now, because I know I've had my fair share of grooming challenges. I am god awful at cutting my dog's nails. So although I'll brush my dogs regularly, I'll make sure that their eyes are nice and clean, I'll clean their ears, I'll do the basic stuff like that. They will go to a groomer for their nails, for their big shower and things like that, because we've only got a tiny shower cubicle and I don't want to stress them out that way. I am god awful at cutting the nails, and hand on my heart, cards on the table, there's been many times where I've tried to cut Athos's nails and he's got jet black nails. I've cut straight into the quick and it looks from a scene from a horror movie. And as a result, of course, the other two dogs are watching that thinking, I don't think I'm going to be happy with that one. So that decreased my bond and the trust that the dogs had in me. So you've got to pick and choose. Use the ones that you're comfortable with doing as your bonding experience. Let the professionals do the stuff that you're not confident in, or learn how to do it properly. So that's what I would kind of say were my biggest grooming challenges. But Jay, I'm sure you'll list out a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. So if everybody needs to start somewhere, right? You need to learn how to properly cut the nails or how to trim the fur and things like that. If while you're practicing and then you run into the same issue that Fraser did, you cut into the quick and then blood's everywhere, the most important thing from a behavior point of view is that you don't panic. Because the moment you panic, your dogs start to get worried as well. They start to freak out as well. You can get this powder that basically just stops the blood from spurting everywhere if that were to happen. But majority of the common issues that a lot of people have is just that the dog is not properly socialized to grooming. So it's really subject on exposure. If you don't tell your dog what grooming is, you don't show your dog what grooming is, and the first time you bring your dog just to grooming, you drop them off there for 4 hours and then you come back and pick them up. Think from your dog's point of view how stressful that is, because my owner just brought me here. I can smell a lot of other dogs here, and majority of those other dogs will be stressed as well. So if you guys have ever been to the shelters or a kennel and then you hear all the dogs barking, that's like a hot box of stress. So even if your dog's not reactive, just being around so much stress and in such a small area, in small space, your dog's going to start becoming reactive as well. And then they will just have negative associations with going to the groomers. There have been some cases it got so bad that the dog just doesn't want to leave the house because there's a possibility that leaving the house means going to the groomers as well. And then you see your dog start to just plant themselves down on the ground, or if you take out the leash, the harness, they get really scared. That's a very big issue. So I've always advised clients that if you're not going to do the grooming yourself and you want to bring your dog to the groomers, find a very good groomer, of course. Find one that's as fear-free as possible. Find and talk to them about their operating hours and whether you can bring your dog down for just some socialization. Not to socialize with the other dogs there. It's basically the same as going to the vet. What we do is if your groomer opens up at 10, their operating hours starts at 10 a.m. They should be there by 9:30, right? They have to set up the store and everything like that. You bring your dog, you ask the groomers first, of course, and then you bring your dog down at 9:30. Let your dog go in, just get a couple of treats and then leave. Don't do anything. You don't need to start grooming there yet. You do this a couple of times, your dog starts to get more excited about going to the groomers instead. And then because they know that they're going to get a treat and get a toy, get some form of rewards. Once you've gotten past that, if you've done that for a good number of times, then you can start bringing them for quick grooms, I call it. Not a full groom, not the full 3-4 hour one, depending on your breed of dog. You bring them down for maybe a nail clip or just a trim or just ear cleaning, and then you leave, and then you slowly build up that duration over time. A lot of dogs that are generally more anxious or more scared, it usually comes from trauma in the past. And like I said earlier, if something bad happens, the most important thing is to not freak out over it. You have to show your dog that you're in control. I'm very confident. I'm in control of the situation. Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything. If your dog senses that from you, they won't build such a core memory on this fear, on this trauma. And of course, dogs that a lot of a lot of our specials have a very big nervous disposition to a lot of things, to novelties. So you will probably have to do a lot more work if your dog is generally more skittish, more fearful, more anxious. And it is purely based off you and your dog. Everyone's progress is different. Like for Blue, it took maybe 3 months of work. With Oreo, it was a lot quicker, maybe 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Also, it's probably because I got better. I trialed and error with Blue, and then I did a lot better with Ori as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that is very clear in that is that the fear of grooming is a significant thing and it is real. And this is the same for everything. So this is where I can comment from a behavioral standpoint. Muzzle training, harness shaping, shaping a leash, crate training, all of this is shaping. Grooming is no different. Now, I've done many courses on preparing dogs for vets. I've gone into veterinary surgeries and trained veterinary staff on how to do shaping for the animals and the dogs that they're working with. Grooming is no different. The only difference is my grooming ability is not as high as my ability for other things. But shaping is incredibly important, as Jay was mentioning there. And it's something that we must ensure that we get our dogs ready for. Now, my experience, for example, when I took my boys to Cloud, they were great. I was walking, I saw the place, I went in. All 3 of my dogs went in, said hi to the staff, got treats from the staff. Then we left. That was it. That was their first exposure to the facility. Then I brought them one by one. First session for Aramis, he just got his nails clipped. First session for Porthos and Athos, they didn't even get their nails clipped. They just got a bit of a brushing. And then the next time, my boys were actually okay. Apart from Athos, he needed a little bit more time. But the second time, both Aramis and Porthos, full grooming, no problem. Athos, just a little bit more of a brushing, some nail clipping, and he was okay. Third time, much better. So these are the things, you've got to build that up slowly. But on top of that, at home, I was working on the basic grooming things that they will be doing there. This is why my boys are not terrified of the vets, even though they are what we call in Singapore specials, which are the ex-jungle dogs, the ex-street dogs, the dogs that are naturally more skittish because it's a survival thing. They need to be like that. Now, if you've got a pedigree spaniel, for example, and this spaniel's come from a great long line of dogs that have been handled all the time and they're very comfortable and they've had great socialization for professional breeders, which is not as common as you might think, then of course putting them to a groomer is going to be really, really easy. So you've got to understand what is actually going to be happening to your dog. So one thing that is very useful is making sure you go to groomers that have no issues with you watching, or not, maybe not watching, but like the grooming facilities got glass windows that you can look into. So that means that they've got no issues with people peeking in and seeing how they're doing it. If groomers are saying, oh no, you don't get to see, it's behind closed doors, it's a little bit of a red flag, because why would they be so upset about somebody watching? So it's these little tips that you've got to be aware of when it comes to picking the right people, getting your dog ready for it, and all that. But don't worry, we'll cover more of these fear-free grooming tips a little bit.
Correct me if I'm wrong as well. Like when your dog can't see you but can smell you, it creates a lot more stress and anxiety as well. When you were talking about like the glass windows and stuff like that. So letting your dog see you while they're going through what's naturally a nervous, stressful situation for them helps a lot.
With most dogs.
Yeah.
So there are exceptions to that rule. Before anybody says anything in the comments, are some dogs, generally dogs that have got over attachment to their owner, they'll start to get really upset that their owner's not right beside them. But most dogs, it doesn't hurt for them to see you. I'm very lucky that my boys, Porthos today, all he needed was to see that I was there at the beginning and then he was fine. To be honest, the moment Felicia brought out a tennis ball, he was fine after that.
It's fine. I'm not surprised at that.
But let's move on to fear-free grooming tips. What does fear-free actually mean, Jay?
Okay, so fear-free means you are not restricting the dog. You are not inducing any form of stress or fear as much as possible. Like I said, to be completely realistic, grooming is never 100% stress-free for dogs because it's just something that's not natural for them. They are very used to just grooming themselves if necessary, or having like a member of their pack to groom them and things like that. But fear-free grooming essentially means that you need to have a lot of patience with your dog. You start slow. You don't immediately rush into the grooming. So every piece of equipment that you have for your dog in the entire grooming process has to be shown to your dog in a very positive way. So like if you have your clippers, you have to make sure that if your dog looks at your clippers, they get a treat. If your dog investigates the clippers, they get a treat. And then if you hold the clippers and you hold your dog's paw, they get a treat. So you start building it up to there. You start with the very basics of just associating the item, and then you have to associate the object, the action as well, which is actually trying to cut your dog's nails. So in my group classes for the grooming, I have told my the participants to hold their dog's paw, hold the clippers, and just tap on the nail, and then give them a reward for that. And then just start tap each nail, and then over time they'll start to get more relaxed with the nails, with the nail cutter. The mistakes a lot of people make is that you go to, let's say, Pet Lover Center, you tell the staff there, oh, I just got a new dog, I need to get all the stuff, and they will sell you everything, like the brush, the toothbrush, the clippers, the shampoo, conditioner, whatsoever, but they don't teach you how to use it. And then the first time you use it, you clip too deep, or you can't clip properly, or when you try to hold your dog's nail and your hands are shaky, you don't get to clip properly, and then it just becomes such a stressful situation for not just you, for your dog as well. And then from then on, it's gone. You tried that one time, and then after that, nope, I'm going to leave it all to the groomers. So your dog already has a very bad association with nail clippers. Depending on the behavioral issues that your dog has, they might have other issues. you might not want to bring them to the groomer straight away because you're just going to induce more stress. And then that's how groomers get bitten as well, or the people around them. I've had a lot of clients who I've strongly advised them to, if you want to start cutting your dog's nails, you got to take it slow because they already have a negative association with the whole process. But they went ahead, they just brought their dogs down there, and then the groomers tried their best to, restrain the dog or hold the dog down. And then it becomes like a 5-minute nail cut becomes an hour long because the dog is just flailing about and just trying to get out of it. So please do not do things like that. If you want to do it for your dog, learn how to do it properly, become confident in doing it before, or just leave it to professionals completely.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're a broken record when it comes to things like this, but it's short and sweet sessions, positive reinforcement, always end on a positive. It's very much like training sessions. You've got to very gradually increase durations as dogs get comfortable if you're doing it yourself. The groomers, if they're good groomers, they'll know how to do that themselves as well. It's somewhat similar to any kind of behavior. You cannot expect your dog to be taught the basics and then be able to go and do it in real life. In the same way that if you had one session in a boxing gym and then somebody tried to put you into a competition level boxing, you wouldn't enjoy that and you wouldn't do very well at that and you'd be very scared. It's very, very similar in that sort of same way.
So even the location where you want to groom your dog matters a lot. So you have to ensure that it's a very calm and relaxing place. If every time you want to bring your dog to groom at home, you have to drag your dog into the shower or you have to drag your dog into the yard, they're not going to be very happy about that. And they start to resent that location and they start to never want to go to that place. So what I've done with Blue and Ori is that I've let them explore. Like, let's say, okay, so my toilet's over here. I just leave the door open and I just toss treats inside. Let them investigate, go in, and they come out. I will not close the door on them because the moment you trap them in, they start to get stressed. It's like, if just think of it from our perspective, right? Like, you're following me. I put something over there in that room. The moment you go in, I slam the door shut. You're going to get scared. You're going to get stressed. You're going to get nervous. You're going to get worried. You're going to get, a lot of issues. So think of it from that perspective, and then you'll do a lot better. So you start to ensure that your dog has no fear about going to this place. In fact, your dog loves going to this place. Then if you do this often enough, you'll randomly see your dog go into the toilet. So sometimes I'm just like, maybe I'm just at home and I'm just doing some chores, and then like Blue will just be lying down, resting in the toilet because she finds that place very comfortable already. So make sure you shape the location for your dog. And then you can put things inside for them. Like you can have nice little music playing in the background for those what's that playlist called, Fraser? The
Through a dog's ear.
Yes, Through a Dog's Ear. Yeah, that one's a very good one on Spotify. You can have that play in the background.
So Through a Dog's Ear is the only one that I found that's actually it's actually done studies on it, which was pretty cool. So I'll just find that and I'll post it into the chat for people.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's the location. You can use like diffusers, you can use calming sprays. Depending on your dog's paws and their nails, you might want to use like non-slip mats. You can have some like waterproof toys inside as well. Depends on your dog. Completely depends on your dogs. But you should know your dog best. Whatever they think it's a very good reward for them, whether it's not scary for them, use that to your advantage and shape the location as well. That's where you begin. So the next segment that I'm going to talk about is actually all the tools that you need. So very basic for any, I wouldn't call us home groomers. I would just say people want to groom their dogs. You need to have a very good brush, depending on your dog's fur, of course. So some longer ones need a better brush. Some of shorter ones, like for Blue, I use a very simple one. Or depending on how much your dog sheds as well, you might need to get like your undercoat rake or your de-shedder. clippers and grinders, I tend to use both, but I do know quite a few people who, if you do it often enough, you just need the Dremel. You just need to grind the nails like once or twice a week, and then it kind of just files itself down. But that also depends on the level of activity your dog has, because dogs' nails can naturally file themselves if like they go running and stuff like that. If they run a lot or they walk a lot, you will see that their nails are naturally filed, and then the only one that you have to work on is their dew claws, because that one doesn't get filed by itself. And then that one's very dangerous if it gets too long, of course. Ear cleaning solutions, try to do that very often. I use, you call me fancy for using this, but I use shampoo and conditioner for Blue and Ori. You started calling me fancy when I asked you to help me pick it up, but I like using it. So I use the shampoo. I rinse through everything. I make sure I give them a good scrub down, and then I apply the conditioner. And while I'm waiting for the conditioner to set, I start doing things like their teeth, their nails, their ears, and then by the time I'm done with all that, then I can just wash up the conditioner. So it's not fancy. It's just more of I'm just used to it that way. I'm making the best of my time.
I just love the fact that Blue and Ori are ex-street dogs, and now they get shampooed and conditioned and all that stuff. I mean, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, guys, I come from a background of very much, we grew up around working dogs and things like that. And yes, they got showered, yes, they got looked after, but there was none of them got conditioner, none of them got fancy scents and things like that. And that's kind of why my boys, although they do get the basic groomings, I tend not to do any of that stuff. You'll never see my boys with raincoats on or booties or any of that stuff.
Yeah,
But that's just because that's the type of person I am. It doesn't mean that we're like you guys are doing that. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just the way they are. In fact, I just saw there that my Aunt Glor has just jumped on watching this. Ironically, when you were talking about doing shampooing and conditioning for your dogs. Now, Aunt Glor's husband, Uncle Rick, used to breed dogs, working dogs. He used to breed Labradors and Beagles, I believe, if memory serves me right. So a very different sort of world. So I can only imagine what her reaction actually was when you came on and heard that. If you're still listening, Aunt Glor, please shoot something in the comments to let us know.
I will also for those who have dogs with longer hair, if your dogs have matting, I strongly recommend you do not try to demat it yourself. Always bring it to a professional, because if you do it wrongly, it can really hurt your dog. Yeah, so it depends on how heavy the matting is, but yeah, if your dogs have mats, that means you have to brush them more often. And if you wish to, you have to get them dematted, of course. Don't just leave it there. Bring them to a professional groomer to get it dematted. Also, a couple of tips, like when you're brushing your dog's fur, please brush in the direction of the hair growth. It seems like common sense, doesn't it? But I've seen people brush against the hair growth before, and I don't understand why. So you should be able to tell. Like most dogs, you just like go down their body, you just stroke towards the tail, from the head to the tail. Most dogs are like that. I can't think of any dogs who are the other way, actually.
Yeah.
But maybe shorter fur ones. But yeah. So please don't make it rough for your dogs. Clipping their nails, you have to do it fast and confident. It's very similar to, because you're holding the nail. If you're holding their nails, right, and then your hands are shaking, and then you're holding the nail clip in the other hand and your hands are shaking as well. From your dog's perspective, that's already so scary. Imagine if the nurse at a hospital was going to draw blood from you and then their hands are shaking with the needle. You wouldn't feel very comfortable either. So it's the same thing for dogs. The longer you hold their nails, the more uncomfortable they become as well, because they're tolerating it, right? And then if you have to take time to try to like angle it properly and stuff like that, it's going to cause a lot of stress for them as well. So that's why you see the professional groomers, they can do it very quickly. They can just like snap, 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 snap. But that one takes practice. That one takes a lot of experience, a lot of practice as well. If you want to clip their nails, I would always suggest just clipping right at the tip so that you don't damage, you don't accidentally get the quick. Don't try to go like this much at one go, just like right off the tip, just right off the tip of your fingernails every time. That also helps your dog get more comfortable with it, because the more comfortable you are doing it, the more comfortable your dog is doing it. So and of course, yep.
Sorry, from a training and behavior standpoint, use your training to get the dogs into the positions that make it easiest. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't think about this. They just try and manhandle their dogs. But if you're needing to clean your dog's ears, if you're needing to check your dog's eyes, if you're needing to put in eye drops or ear drops, let's go back to the veterinary side of things, because that's where I'm more comfortable talking about. Because a lot of the times, like when you go into the pet shop and buy things, the vet will say, oh, you've got to give your dog ear drops or eye drops twice a day. They don't tell you how. If your dog doesn't like it, they're kind of like, yeah, figure it out. So you've got to use the knowledge that you've already got, or the knowledge that you can find. You can have your dog doing things like middle, which is where your dog will go in between your legs on cue. So if you've got them in that and they're able to sit and look up at you, that means you've got a perfect position to be able to check their ears, to be able to give the eye drops. And by shaping those activities, it makes it much easier. Now, if that's cleaning their ears or cleaning the gunk out of their eyes, that makes life a lot easier as well. Or if you're able to get your dog to stand on cue, that makes it easier for brushing underneath. Or if you're able to get your dog to give a paw, that makes them more comfortable for doing the nail clippings. Honestly, I think that might actually be the only use for paw. Or rolling over, it means that you're able to check and clean all the underneath and things like that. Use your training to make life easier for yourself. Don't just try to manhandle your dogs. Use shaping, use cues, teach new cues and commands that are going to make things easier. If your dog has got a really fluffy tail, teach him to do a reverse middle so that you've got access to the tail easily without them wanting to run away, because you've already started to get them used to it. I know that sounds like common sense, but the thing is, if you don't sit thinking about this all the time, why would you think about it,
Yeah. So apart from, adding on to that training aspect of things, when I shower my girls, I have a lot of cues that I use as well. So I let them know what I'm going to do next. So if I tell them like eyes, then I'm going to go touch their eyes. I'm going to go work on their eyes. Or if I say teeth, that means I'm going to start brushing their teeth. This is to inform your dog so that it doesn't come as a shock to your dog as well. And so basically the way I did it was like, I just have treats. I said eyes, I touch around their eyes. I don't touch their eye, of course, just around their eyes, and then give them a treat for that. There's also very simple cues that you can get your dog to do, to move back and forth, turn around, things like that when you're showering. Because my shower isn't huge, right? So it's quite small. So just me and either Blue or Ori inside is already going to be very, very squeezy. So I have to get her to turn around sometimes. I have to get her to move forward, move backwards. I even have a cue for like tail. That means I'm going to start cleaning her tail. So think of all these things you can do, and it's our responsibility to make sure that our dogs are as comfortable as possible during this any form of interaction. So I feel like this is something I do as consent. So I tell my dogs like, front paw, back paw, and ears, eyes, move forward, move backwards, turn around, things like that. And I will always look for signs of stress. If they are showing a lot of stress, of course, I just end it there. When I started making sure that they were getting comfortable with grooming, or I started doing all of this shaping, it was very tough because I sometimes could only do like 15 seconds of the groom, and I saw that Blue was getting very stressed out. She started going towards the door, she started to paw and things like that. So I would just end it there. I just cut it there. And then you build duration over time. Don't think about, I need to get all of these things done today. don't try that. Don't force your way into doing things like that. Do what you can depending on your dog's progress, and then start to build duration over time, build tolerance over time. That's how we're supposed to do all of these things.
Absolutely. And of course, if you've got any concerns or issues, reach out for professional help. Now, if it comes to shaping or simple tips and tricks, you can reach out to us. Of course, we'd be happy to help. But also remember, there are great groomers out there who you can ask. And they, if they're worth their salt, will answer the questions. They will want to help you. You know, they're not just going to try and sell you things. So from this point, I think it's time to start answering some of the questions that we got through before the podcast. And of course, if anybody watching right now has any questions at all, please put them in the comments. We'll be more than happy to answer them. Now, Jay, for the sake of this episode, I'm going to ask the questions and you answer them.
Sure thing.
Okay. Okay. Sarah from Singapore. My dog is scared of water. How can I get my dog to be comfortable with grooming when they are scared of water?
Okay, so the dog might not actually be scared of water. They might be scared of the whole process that's coming right after the water. So you have to be able to figure that out, because Blue loves the shower but hates the rain. Ori is the opposite. Ori hates the rain but loves jumping into the ocean or lake or any puddle of water she sees. So think about it this way. If your dog is already scared of the whole process, you have to break it down into a lot smaller parts. So maybe just have a bowl of water right next to you, and then have a lot of treats ready. You just dip your hand in the water, and then you just sprinkle it over your dog, and then offer a treat. Just like that. If your dog is very comfortable with that, and you see your dog starting to get excited and starting to play, that means your dog is not scared of the water. Your dog is just scared of what's coming after the water. So this is chained association with a lot of things. It's the same when you go to the front door and then you take your dog's leash out. They know that a walk is coming. That's why they get so excited. So it goes both ways. They can get excited because of something. They know what's going to happen next. They can get very scared as well. So you have to make sure that your dog slowly gets more and more comfortable with the entire process. Look at it as a whole process, not just the water aspect alone.
So just to share a personal experience on that one, our old apartment I loved it. It was a small penthouse, had a rooftop garden, so I had a hose up there and things like that. My boys used to get their showers by going up there on a sunny day. I would hose all three of them down, lather all three of them up, and hose all three of them down. And all three of them loved it because they were being washed together at the same time while they were playing after a long walk in the woods. It was a great experience for them. When we moved here, that was no longer possible. We don't have a garden here. So that's when I had to start trying to take them into the shower. And I had to shape them to do that so that they'd be okay with doing it, because I refused just to drag them in. I didn't think that was fair. So that was a very good example of the boys loving the process there, but disliking the process here, simply because of the environmental change, the way that I was having to do it. All of that stuff is very important to think about.
Yep, definitely.
Okay,
definitely.
Next question. Okay, so the next question is from Lin Tan. I have heard that you shouldn't wash your dogs. I've heard that their natural oils keep them clean and they do not require baths. Wild wolves don't bath in the wild. Why would our domestic dogs need to be bathed?
Okay, so can't compare wolves and dogs. They're domesticated, not domesticated.
Yeah,
Big difference.
40,000. Well, before you go into it, I'm just going to point out 40,000 years of evolution has not just changed their behavior, it's changed the actual animal. Check out a Chihuahua. It's not a wolf. You probably couldn't get much further from a wolf.
Exactly. So, the reason we shower our dogs is because they have odor built up, which is it's more of a human thing as well, because the odor affects us a lot, and when most of the time people can't stand it. The natural oils is a very important thing, but then there can be too much oils. It's the same for like our faces and our body. So if you don't wash your face for I don't know how many hours, days, or whatever people, I do it every day, just saying, but I don't know what's the normal one for people.
Sure
So
you do, Jay. Sure you do.
yeah, so the oil can build up and then it can cause a lot of issues. It also depends on the breed of your dog. So dogs with oily coats like your retrievers, they may need to be bathed more often to reduce things like their odor and too much oil buildup. But there's also, oh, sorry, but you should also do a lot of daily brushing. So you can remove all the like the excess hair and the dead hair. And more importantly, people don't realize this about brushing as well, is that when you brush your dogs properly, it distributes the oils evenly. So that your dog won't have like dry patches of skin here and there, because your dog has access to certain parts of their body that they're going to be able to nibble on, to chew on, or to scratch. Those areas tend to have the most issues first. They dry up very quickly. But if you brush often, you actually distribute like the oils nicely onto those areas as well. So hope that helps.
So one thing I'm just going to point out on that one as well, simply from an observation point of view, is our domestic dogs live in our houses. So there's that. Our domestic dogs also live in towns, in cities, in villages even. They're beside the roads. They're on concrete where it's dustier, it's dirtier. There's fumes, there's pollution, there's litter, there's filth. So a dog or an animal that's living out in the forest, yeah, you might think that dirt's dirty. Dirt's not that dirty in comparison to industrial dust and industrial chemicals and smog and smoke and all that jazz. Of course, in an ideal world, we would all live in nice rural areas which are very, very clean, and our dogs can go and play in the river, and oh, it's all wonderful. My mum's dog gets groomed, but not nearly as often as a dog that lives in the city would need to get groomed.
Yeah.
Because Monty's always up in the hills, he's in the rivers, he's in this, he's in that. He has a great time doing that. So as a result, he doesn't smell that much. But if you've got a dog that lives in the city, that walks on the streets and things like that, you're going to have to do it. Because otherwise your dog is going to get skin issues, your dog is going to get itchy, because the grit, the dust, the crap that they pick up, you know, try rolling around in a car park and see how you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So
and also the climate matters a lot as well. Like where Monty is, it's not as humid and shitty as it is here in Singapore. So if we are
shitty's a relative term. It depends.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. You can tell I don't like the weather here. But yeah, the moment you leave the house and you start sweating, you're going to shower a lot more over here than you are in air, for sure, right? Like when you go back there, you might shower once a day. But then in Singapore, you're going to shower 2 or 3 times a day just because of how humid it is. So if it's that bad for us, imagine how bad it is to be covered in fur as well. And you get only sweat from your paws.
Jay, maybe two or three people that are watching this know where air is.
Okay, sorry, in Scotland. Yeah, in a colder climate, basically.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Now, this leads me to the next one, which I thought was quite good, from Mike. How often should you bathe a dog then? Now, of course, based on what we've just said there, environment makes a big difference. But for the sake of that, Jay, give a rough answer of, depending on where your dog lives, the environment they live in, how often should they be bathed? And obviously breed matters and coat matters as well.
So normally for people in Singapore, I would say every other week, like maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. That's a very good like frequency to have for your dog. Outside of that, if you're from somewhere not as shitty, I'm gonna say it again. Once a month is pretty good already. Also, apart from what Fraser has pointed out, you have to think about how much activities your dog gets as well. Like, are they running around in open fields? Are they rolling around in mud and dirt all the time? Because if they do that too often, you don't want to just like wash them down. You want to actually properly shower them. And I I was supposed to talk about shampoos as well. I forgot about that one. So there is a lot of debates whether people should use like the medicated shampoo when your dog has very dry skin or like itchy skin and things like that. You have to really understand what ingredients are in the shampoo, because you don't want to use one that's so highly medicated and so that might have like steroids in it and things like that. Those kind of medicated shampoos, what they tend to do is dry out your dog's skin as well. So your dog might have an issue like a rash, but rash is actually dry skin as well. And if you use your medicated shampoo too often, the medicated shampoo is there to get rid of bacteria or dirt and all those things. If you keep using that, it's just going to keep getting rid of things that are not there anymore. So you're going to dry out your dog's skin even more. I would highly suggest that if you were to get a medicated shampoo for your dog, make sure you understand what's in it and the frequency that you can use it on your dogs. I have medicated shampoo for my girls at home because once a year they start to get rashes. I use it at one time and I will not use it again for at least another 2 months, kind of thing. Although on the bottle it says shower twice a month wash twice a month with the shampoo. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, so you have to figure out how your dog is as well and see how often they need the shower. But so find a good balance, because think of it this way: too often you wash out all their natural oils, too little, and then you let their oil build up too much. So you have to find a good balance. I would say majority of the dogs can be done once a month.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. So for all you guys that have watched live, thank you very much. For all of you watching on the recording, please keep doing so. Please remember that you can also listen to this on the podcast providers, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other ones that people use. This gets uploaded as the podcast onto there. Just as a quick recap, just remember what we were saying there. Take your time, be patient, make the process positive. If you're not sure of some of these tips, go back and take a listen or reach out and ask. Now, I know this seems strange because, well, he's our host. He's one of our trainers at Noble Canine as well. But thank you, Jay, for joining us for this one, because this was your area. This is not, I couldn't jump in and put anything else in there. It's not my expertise. But for all the listeners, reach out for any questions on this, and I'm sure Jay would be more than happy to jump back onto these comments, even if you're watching it from a recording, to answer them. And please do join us for next week. Please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or anywhere else. Please rate us. Obviously, we would prefer higher ratings, but every rating helps us. Please please share. We want to try and get this information out to as many dog owners and pet lovers as we can so that we can help them. Okay, so this is why we do this podcast. This podcast isn't part of the business, really, although we do talk about the business on it. But I think this has been a really useful one. I can't stress enough how much benefit I've had just from working with Jay and learning all of this about grooming. So, Jay, do you have any last words to say before we call it?
Yes, so I would like everyone out there to research more into Fear Free Grooming, because the more people that know about Fear Free Grooming, you leave less opportunities for those people who very, very harshly treat dogs during their groomings. I'm talking about groomers and professionals, of course. Yeah, so please go read up about things like that.
Great. Okay, so one thing I will say is that we do not get anything for saying this, but the two groomers that I would recommend is in the East, you go to Doggy Retreat, who've got their own spa and they do grooming there. And if you're in the West, Cloud Grooming, which is in the Clemente area, is also very good. That's the one that I use with my boys. If you're on Facebook, I've posted their Facebook groups in the comments. I'll also put it in the show notes if you're listening elsewhere. Jay, do you have anyone else that you would give a shout out to?
Yeah, I can't remember the name. Let me check.
Okay, so while Jay's checking that one,
Snob Art. Sorry, I found it.
Sorry, go on.
They're Snob Art. They're in Coven. So yeah, they're the ones that I've brought my girls to.
Great. So have a look at those guys if you're needing professionals to help. So next week we have got our next episode. Please join us live for that. Keep an eye out on our social medias. You've got the Wagging Tail Podcast Facebook group. You've got the Noble Canine Facebook group and Instagram. If you're not already following our Instagram, please do so. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up there. We are going to be launching online courses very, very soon. We're going to be launching an ultimate obedience course. So this will be a fairly large obedience course, which people can either come to as one big block, which obviously will make it more affordable, or it will be separated into 3 or 4 different sections where people might feel the need that their dog needs the little bit extra help. This is designed for adult dogs who have maybe gone through some training before, but the owners are thinking, yeah, we should probably do a little bit more of that. Or for adult dogs that maybe have had no training before and just need that additional help, but don't require one-on-one because the behavioural aspects aren't that heavy. So keep an eye out for that one. That one's going to start on the 29th. On top of that, Jay's next Fear Free Grooming class is going to be happening on the 29th as well. So in the pinned comments on Facebook, you can actually click on that link and you can have a look at what the last grooming class looked like. And if you're interested in that, you can go to the website and you can book it straight on there. If you're not sure how to do that, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. Thanks again for listening, everyone. If you want to support the podcast, I urge you, please consider becoming a member on Patreon. It really helps us with making sure the editing's better, with getting better guests on. Not that the guests we've had on aren't great. They are great, but to get more guests on and to making sure that our equipment and technical stuff are a lot better. We've been having some struggle with the technical stuff via Facebook, so we may need to try and find a way of purchasing some software which fixes that, but right now that's not really possible. But with that said, guys, we will leave it there. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for watching. Take care of yourself, take care of your dogs, and we will talk to you next time. Cheers.
Here, guys.